It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to the Phil Ferguson Show. It is now early December 2020. Just a day or two ago, I was on the Hang Up with my good friend Matt Dillahunty. We had some fun talking to callers who are a little confused about reality and religion, and thankfully a few people asked nice investment questions, so we had fun answering a couple of those. Again, that's Matt Dillahunty, and the show is called The Hang Up. So we had great fun doing that. Let's see, political things. Trump's still an idiot, fighting to stay in the office of president, but it kind of looks like the light at the end of the tunnel is not a train, but actually the exit out of this hell that Trump has created for our country. He still has an opportunity to screw up things and to pardon things. One of the fun things now is he's considering pardoning his children and friends and other family members. Of course, when you pardon somebody, they're supposed to already be convicted of a crime. So what crime are they going to admit to and then receive a pardon for? It is a very, very weird world. So hopefully he doesn't mess up too much. Another fun little thing before we get into the actual content of the show, which, by the way, I have two little segments, Investing Skeptically segments. The formal segment is about a super shitty model, not a super shitty fund. But then the bonus one is an actual shitty fund. So we're going to talk about how things are presented, twisted, and all that fun stuff. And later on, the interview, the real reason a lot of people are here, we are going to talk to Mike. That's the name we've decided to use. Mike is a Jehovah's Witness, and Mike is currently, he's in the cult religion, but doesn't believe it, doesn't buy it, and he is able to give us a perspective from inside. And one of the reasons he doesn't want to leave the religion is that he would be ostracized, disfellowshipped, not able to communicate and contact with his family. So it's a very unfortunate situation, but we are going to get a little bit of a view inside someone who's currently in the Jehovah's Witness religion. But anyway, back to the other thing I was going to talk about briefly here. Solar panels. I've talked about them. I can't remember exactly how up-to-date you are. They got put on the house, and I was pretty sure they weren't working correctly. And here's another funny thing. After they got put in and installed and everything, they tested it. They made sure that it worked. It produced electricity. And then they had to turn it off because it needed to be inspected by a local government official to make sure it was past code and all that stuff. And it makes sense. Well, 7, 8, 10 days later, an electrician from the company, from the installer, comes, and they meet a local inspector. I guess the inspector wasn't here 60 seconds. Not 60 minutes, 60 seconds. I don't know what it is they inspected. I was inside working, and I saw that a car had pulled up. And I went and got my shoes on and walked out back where the electrician was already, and they were done. So I think the inspector must have just looked at a couple of the junction boxes or panels outside the house and said, yeah, that all looks good, signed off, and the system was approved. Well, when the electrician then turned on the system, realized that there were some things that weren't hooked up correctly. So, wow, Yeah, so much for an inspection to see if everything works. So they turned it on and we started producing electricity. But I soon got the impression that we weren't producing. The house, the panels, the system wasn't producing what I would have expected it to. And I called the company, and they were all very nice. But everyone would start off with, well, it is November, and you're going to get considerably less production in November. And I said, I understand. I've run a model. I created a spreadsheet, several spreadsheets. I know how big the system is. I've taken into account the percentage of solar production one could expect given any month of the year compared to other months of the year. And I've made these calculations, and it looks like I should be getting this amount. I guessed about 20 kilowatt hours on a full sun day, a day that's all sunny. And I was getting 6. So I was getting a third maybe of what I thought I should get. But, I'm not technically an expert in this, but I thought it was not really fancy math that I had to do to figure this out. So they finally sent someone out and realized that 2 breakers had failed. So the panel that they had added to the exterior of the house has multiple breakers, just like your fuse box or your breaker, your panel inside your house. And 2 of them were bad. And of course, I'm wondering, how does something like that happen? Were they bad when they put them in and they didn't notice that they were bad? I mean, I'm thinking of something like this in electronics. The probability of a breaker being bad is really, really low. 2 of them being bad? So I'm going with, without any evidence, mind you, so just live with it, that they put the breakers in, and at some point while they were setting up or checking or wiring, that they got burnt out. No big deal, but clearly they didn't catch it, and the inspector didn't catch it 10 days later, and the guy who turned it on that day didn't catch it, or they blew after everybody inspected it, which means there was probably something wrong with how it was set up. But they were nice, the company. They sent someone out, and they fixed it, and the next day it was magic. It was all producing in that the first full day of sun after the repair. We did get 20.2 kilowatt hours of electricity in the last few days of November. And keeping in mind, for a lot of people in a modest American house, as modest as American houses are, you probably use somewhere between 20 and 30 kilowatt hours a day. So for some people, even in November, this system is creating 100% of what your daily usage might be. Mine is higher because I'm lazy and I don't turn off lights as fast as I should. I also work from home with 2 computers. I have multiple air filters, which don't take a whole lot of power, to try to keep the air clean. Dehumidifier in the basement so we don't have any mold issues. And of course, a really, really big thing is 2 cars. So 2 cars that can charge and use electricity to drive around. And that adds quite a bit to the bill. I mean, it's still way cheaper than the gas that I used to buy, but it does add to the electric bill. So I'm hoping that in May, early June, which is usually peak production time, I might be able to get 70, 75, maybe even close to 80 kilowatt hours of production of electricity created in a day, and it would be a day that's all sunny. On a really heavy, cloudy day, you only get about 10 to 20% of what you get on a fully sunny day. So it will eventually pay for itself, and because I have hourly billing, the electricity I create is worth the most in the afternoon when the system is going to create the most. So that's kind of cool, and I'll keep you posted on that as we go. So enough about that. Of course, we have, like I said, coming up a super shitty model called iQuant. I'll go through that in a segment. And then Sparrow Fund. And then after that, we'll talk to Mike from Jehovah's Witnesses. and I know you're going to love all of it.
I've always been an atheist. I simply, as time went on, I became more interested in American intellectual history, and I felt that the secular side of our history was very much underrepresented in readable, popular history books. So that's how I got into it. I am not an atheist propagandist in that I'm not interested in converting people to atheism. What I'm interested in is talking about what the secular side of our history has meant to the development of the United States.
And what has the secular side of the development of our history meant for the development of the United States?
Well, it's something that's not talked about much because we've got all these people going blah, blah, blah about how this was founded as a Christian nation. But it wasn't founded as a Christian nation, although we were overwhelmingly a majority Christian people at the time the Constitution was written. But what did the founders do in the Constitution? They made a break with all previous documents, including the state constitutions at the time after the Revolution, and they didn't mention God. They didn't say that governmental power flows from God. They said, we the people. The word God does not appear in the Constitution at all, which always astonishes my college audiences when I tell them that, which tells you how badly American history is taught. In fact, what's generally taught about the origins of the United States is everybody who came here for religious liberty, which is true. But initially, before we became the United States and were colonial America, the people who came here for religious liberty came here for religious liberty for themselves, not for anybody else. So the first thing the Puritans did in Massachusetts was try to get rid of everybody who didn't agree with them. However, the founders had a very different view, which is because there were already people of so many different faiths here, we needed to have no state faith. So they just left it out altogether of the Constitution. The First Amendment was made specifically to protect religion from government. The Constitution itself, which leaves God out, was meant to protect government from religion. The two go together.
That's right. I get emails, and this is from the mailbag. This is an unsolicited email from a company that wants me to sell, or I guess maybe in this case, use their shit and sell it as my own. And nowhere does it say, I can't tell you about this email. And even if it did, I don't know that I really give a shit. And just public notice, any companies out there, you send me something, and I choose to put it on my show. I reserve the right to use whatever you send me in whatever way I feel comfortable with. So this is from iQuant Pro. They're talking about up 12% this year to date, I'm assuming, with a diversified portfolio of income ETFs. And then right below that, it says, you, all capital letters, need this, ... Your clients need this. Okay. Chill the fuck out. Differentiate yourself. It's your book. Take control. When you offer the same as everyone else, you cannot win. There is nothing to differentiate you from your peers, and great service only takes you so far. How are your recommendations different than a typical robo-advisor? The iQuant.pro Global Income ETF model is the game changer you need. By selecting high-quality income ETFs based on strong relative price momentum, the iQuant.pro Global Income ETF model gives your clients the peace of mind they need and the differentiator you deserve. That's fucking my native language. Differentiator? Is that a word? Differentiator. Yes, that's what it says. Differentiator you deserve. Side note, I'm not real big on this whole idea of things you deserve. There's things that you earn. There's things that you work for. Not really much of things you deserve. Maybe freedom, liberty, health insurance. Maybe you deserve those things. But anyway, you don't deserve this fund. Oh, okay. Now in a really whimsically black box, it says up 12% year to date, 4% yield. Wait, if it's up 12, okay, whatever. Negative 0.23 downside capture ratio, 9% max drawdown. And it goes on. The IQ Global Income ETF model, I think that's slightly different than, okay, maybe they just said IQ instead of iQuant.pro. Okay, the IQ Global Income ETF model selects from a starting universe of global and domestic bonds, preferred stocks, and high-yield debt. Here are the current model selections. 20%, ticker ANGL, Van Eck Vectors, Fallen Angel High Yield Bond. High yield, that's code for junk. 20%, ticker FALN, iShares, Fallen Angels US Bond. Also junk. 20%, ticker USHY. Oh my God, I can't keep a straight face. iShares, broad US high yield corporate bonds. More junk bonds. 20%, ticker BSJP, Invesco Bullet Shares 2025 corporate bond. Not a junk bond fund. Maybe close. Oh wait, I pulled it up. Hang on a second. What is the portfolio here? Any second, Morningstar. Credit rating B. Oh yeah, that's quite junky. Okay, so the last one, 20%, ticker FPE, First Trust Preferred Securities and Income. So preferred stocks and income, whatever. And so, okay, I went to Morningstar.com, which anyone can do, and I put in the first ETF, ANGL, and I can find things like almost 9% year-to-date return. Okay, that's really high. Good or not, I don't know yet, but that's really high. Expense ratio 0.35, and the portfolio is intermediate term junk bonds. All five of these are junk, basically junk, or preferreds, which are really risky also. So we can cut to the chase on that. Let's see, the second one, year to date, 10.4. The third one, performance. So much data. Performance year to date, 3. Wait a minute. And fourth one, year to date, 2. And the fifth one, performance year to date, 4. Now, at this point, I realized that something was afoot, because all 5 of these, which each represents 20% of the model. Oh, and in case you didn't know, the model, this is another part of the industry that's very interesting, let's us say. iQuant makes model portfolios, and they sell them to advisors. And you sign up for this model, and you put a client's money in it. So I could pick this model and assign $100,000 of your portfolio to this model, and then they will break it up as they see fit and do whatever the fuck it is their model does. And so the whole pitch is that you can relieve yourself from that pesky annoyance of trying to figure out what to do with your client's money. We'll take care of it for you, so you have more time to sell. And I don't use any models like that, by the way, outside models. I have my own. I have my own system, my own model. Like it or not, that's what I do. So I don't have any use for these, but it was just kind of so over the top, smack you in the head kind of email that, and maybe it's just because I'm in a mood, I thought I would read it to you. But as I went through these things, because I was researching and prep for the segment, none of them got anywhere close to 12%. And I'm thinking, well, how does a portfolio of 5 things that none of them made 12% this year get you to a portfolio average return increase of 12%? And I went back to the email, and I realized down at the very bottom, there's more information. And so I'm going to read you that. This is from the email again, and I quote, "Historical model performance does not guarantee future results. The returns presented represent simulated model returns which are hypothetical, meaning they do not represent actual trading and thus may not reflect material, economic, and market factors such as liquidity constraints that may have an impact on actual decision making.
The hypothetical performance reflects the retroactive application of the model with full benefit of hindsight. End quote. No fucking shit. Oh my God. So this is basically back-tested data. They are looking at really high return bond funds. And just by the way, let's see, one of these, which one was it? These during the period of March lost 10, 20. Did this one fall even more? Let's see, that went from 19 to 15, 20%, 25%. So all of these lost between 10 and 25%, but yet they're claiming that because of their magical skills of knowing when to jump in and out of all of these, the 9% max drawdown, which, by the way, is just a fictional number of what they think running backwards through time is the worst case that they could do. But they could do way worse in the future because they don't control what happens. They just looked back over the last 12 months, made a model. The model sucked, they tweaked the model. The model didn't work, they tweaked the model. The model still sucks, they tweaked the model. And then they finally created a model that it's, at some point must have looked at some of these funds and bought them when these high yield bonds dropped precipitously in March, and said, hey, when they fall 15%, when they fall 20%, this is the time to buy them. Well, no shit, Sherlock. That worked for this year. There's no way to know that that's going to work next year or the year before or the year after. So what you've done is you put all your money in this this program of funds that they can do whatever they want. There's no information here about how fast they're trading, going in and out. So if this isn't a taxable account, you could have ridiculously high tax consequences, even in a year where you lose money, because you could have realized more gains than the losses. So you could be down by the end of the year, but yet still owe taxes. That's fun. That'll piss people off. That's something I don't like. It can happen with any portfolio in a taxable account. It's not frequent that it happens, but if you do buy and selling activity and make money, but then your portfolio drops, your portfolio over the entire year could be down, but you realized some profits during the year. So you have tax consequences on a portfolio that during that select 12-month time period of the calendar year of your tax period, it went down. That's a fun thing for people to experience the first time. So yeah, this is wacky. I was looking for one more thing that I saw, and I don't know if I'll find it here before I just stop wasting your time. Yeah, here it is. The last one, the FPE ETF, which again you can look at Morningstar. They do a thing in the portfolio section where they tell you, as an example, the average credit rating is BB, which is below the minimum requirement for investment grade bonds. So it's a junk fund. It'll often tell you the average maturity of the funds because they're preferred stocks. It's complicated and you don't get a rating there. And it says here, and it also has what types of investments it has. It has 60% of the investments are not classified. Okay. What the fuck is that? I don't know. So without going into the prospectus, which I'm not going to spend any more time doing this, that's kind of wonky. But I'm betting they're mostly preferred stocks, which I don't like. And that's another long, complicated segment. But I can't really call this a super shitty fund because it's not a fund. Let's see, what do they call this stuff? This thing, a program model. Yes, model. This is a super shitty model. It's not going to return 12% every year, which is implied kind of in the email. And it smacks you over the head. And some advisors will use stuff like this that has a proven track record. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. In this case, there is no proven track record because it's hypothetical, because they made it up. Well, they didn't make it up. They selectively chose certain data for the last 12 months and then said, hey, we have a model that made 12% if you would have invested this as it is, and made all the changes that we made over the last 12 months. So I guess this is the first ever super shitty model from iQuant.pro. The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Your investments should be based on your situation, and you should consult with your financial advisor before taking any action. The show may contain ads. These ads are placed into the show by the hosting company after I finish recording and editing. I have little control over the content of the ads, and you should not assume that I support their products or claims. If you choose to support the show via the new Patreon page, that support does not create an advisor-client relationship.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
It's time for a bonus segment. This is a bonus investing skeptically segment, and I don't think this is a super shitty fund, but it's just a shitty fund. But it caught my attention because they sent me an email with some information, and of course, they want me to sell this fund to you. And so when they send me such a lovely material that is very, very carefully cultured, very carefully edited, controlled to make something sound absolutely amazing, I want to dig into it, and often I find it's not quite so amazing. So I want to walk you through for a couple of minutes. This fund is from Sparrow Capital, and the fund is called the Sparrow Growth Fund. And they send me a nice graph showing that year to date, from January 1st of 2020 till the late of August. Oh, actually, this is, to August. It's made 47%. Now, it's kicked some serious ass. Now, first thing is that it's weird. Why only give me this year's data in a graph? Why not 3 years or 5 years or 10 years? So I get curious with things like that. The other thing is that they show the performance of one of the stocks that they've owned year to date, and it doesn't really matter what the stock is, but that stock's made 73%. And so it gives the graph this impression that if you're not looking at it very carefully, that the fund has made 73% year to date. So not anything wrong technically, but it's the way the information is presented and kind of makes it look even more betterer. And I went and looked, and whatever they did this year, 2020, has worked out smashingly well for them. Absolutely fantastic. However, when I went to Morningstar.com and I looked up this fund, and you can do this yourself, the fund symbol is 5 letters, SGFFX. And you can see in the past, prior to 2020, it's not done particularly well. As an example, when measured against the index that they're trying to outperform, that's the Russell Mid-Cap Growth, because this is a mid-cap growth fund. In 2010, it was 13% behind the index. 11, it was up a little bit. 12, it was down a little bit. 13 was up a little bit. 14, minus 11% compared to the index. 16, minus 11%. And last year, minus 8%. So if you had bought anywhere in that time frame, 9, 10, 11 years, 10 years in the history, you would have underperformed what you would have owned in the index. However, in the last 8 months, year-to-date number, they've crushed the index by 37%. So the question, of course, is what is it going to do in the future? They didn't change managers because it's Mr. Sparrow, the founder of this company. I think he's the founder, doing his thing. And it just so happened that for an 8-month time period, it worked really well. But for a 9 to 10 year time period, it did not work very well. Other fun things about this fund, if you get the A shares, Class A, and this is something, if you look at the title or the name of a fund that you own, in this case, it's called Sparrow Growth, and then there's just a letter hanging out there, A. A almost always indicates a front-end load. It's a convention. It's a naming system the industry uses, but there's no regulation to it. But if they throw a random A out there, it means it's a front-end load, usually. And this one has a front-end load of 5.75%. So that's a big hit to get started. The other thing, and probably why they have been performing under the index over the last umpteen years, is that the expense ratio is 2.05%. And so actually in Morningstar it says 2.1%, but you get the idea. It's over 2% a year. So they are charging you 2% a year, and for the last 9 years before 2020, they were charging 2% and providing underperformance. So they're charging a wildly higher than average expense ratio and giving you lackluster performance. But all of a sudden, what they do has worked for 8 months. And so now they're on a big marketing campaign. And of course, dollars are flowing into this fund at record levels, and they're happy to boast about that. And they're making that 5.75% load. But I'm willing to bet, just because history, odds, statistical analysis, that over the next 5 years, this fund probably will not beat its index. And over 10 years, of course, it's even less likely to beat the index. But it sure looks exciting right now. So just something to watch for.
As you get older, you just ditch certain things as you get older, and it's a pleasure to do, right? I mean, for example, right, religion is a very good example. I wouldn't be a very spiritual man, right? I don't believe in God, right? Still Catholic. Because there's nothing you can do when you're Catholic. Once you've started Catholic, frankly, there's no real way to stop being Catholic. Even not believing in God isn't regarded as sufficient reason to get out of the Catholic Church. You'd think it'd be fairly fundamental to the whole thing, but no, Catholicism, the stickiest, most adhesive religion in the world. There's no website you can deregister online. You can't put up your membership card in front of a priest and go, "Feck you, I'm out of here," and walk away. You could join the Taliban. You'd merely be regarded as a bad Catholic. I'm presuming a large chunk of you probably were raised Protestant. Give me a cheer if you had any Protestant upbringing at all. A fair few of you, right? Now, when you do the wafer thing, right, and take the hooks or whatever, thing, it represents the body of Christ. It's a metaphor, it's a symbol of the body of Christ. Oh, not when you're Catholic. When you're Catholic, it actually is the body of Christ. You're supposed to actually believe that it turns into the flesh of Christ in your mouth. Nobody fully explained this to me as a child. I would have spotted the flaw relatively quickly in that. I would have gone, hang on, I might be 8, but I've eaten enough burgers, chicken McNuggets, right? Fish fingers and rashers to know there is no animal flesh in the world that jams itself to the roof of your mouth and hoovers all of the moisture out of your body until you're looking at your mother going, "Can I bring it down with my finger?" It's stuck to the roof of my mouth. And she's going, "Do not take it down with your finger. It's the body of Christ. Leave it where it is." They're making a show of me in the church. Desiccating me from the inside out. Desiccated, by the way.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
All right, everybody. Today, another special guest. I have, let's see, we're going to call our guest Mike, and that is for his personal safety and for some of the things we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. And Mike has a lifelong, I think, involvement in the organization called Jehovah's Witnesses. So we're going to talk about what they are, what they do, and why Mike has to call in and say he's Mike and not just his actual real name and where he lives because of the problems involved with that. Mike, are you with us?
I am.
Excellent, excellent. So we can't really get into details about where you live or what you do, but I do know that you were. Are you still technically a Jehovah's Witness?
I still technically am.
Okay, so
but I can now use my knowledge and experiences to help other people and to do shows like this and give you the absolute most up-to-date information on the inside. Get you the inside scoop, rather.
Yeah, because you're in one of the rooms where it happens, to paraphrase from Alexander Hamilton's play. One of the things that struck me years ago, I think I heard this. Maybe you can help educate or explain. There apparently is this big drive to not have too much formal education, and I thought it was because there's really no point spending all your time getting that education because you're not going to use it because the tribulation or the apocalypse, you can correct me again on verbiage, is coming very, very soon, and you should be out saving people. And I even thought I heard the comparison to if you're walking down the street and you see a store that says going out of business, now hiring, you would not go get a job with a company that's going to close in a week. Please tell me your thoughts about that concept.
You did very well. They kind of see the world as ending at any moment, and especially since COVID happened, they are even, again, all those hairs of the ending apocalypse just it rises on their skin because there's a pandemic and things are getting worse. This is all part of Bible prophecy, and so yes, the signage at the store going out of business yet now hiring is exactly how they see it. The world is about to end. You can't take riches with you to either, well, when you die, which is true, you can't take your money with you, and the new world is going to be a whole new start, so you're not going to take riches with you. So they look at as higher education is dangerous for the most part because you're going to question their beliefs, you're going to question the Bible. It takes a lot of time. You can end up being in debt, and so you have to work to pay off the debt because they think you should pay your debts off.
Yeah,
which is a good thing. So why get $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in debt, which then you have to work ideally full time or more to pay that off when you could be spending that time preaching or doing other work for the organization. So it comes down to they think they have the best education, which is from the Bible and really from their publications, but they would say the Bible. So the world's ending. We have the best education. College can be dangerous in terms of thinking and sometimes the party behavior, the time that it takes to do all that, especially graduate school or depending what you're studying. So they believe they have the best, and it's the best education, and that you should spend your time serving Jehovah and his organization.
Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense from a theoretical perspective, I guess, but it also kind of makes sense from an organization that wants to maximize your ability to make money without owing money and yet getting money sooner so you can keep contributing. Because I imagine if you have $60,000 in college bills, that you might be tempted to reduce the amount you contribute to, I know not to call it the church, the organization. Is that
correct? And they don't have tithing. They don't believe in tithing. So you're not required to give a certain percentage. It is what you want to give, which is actually kind of nice, actually. So you're not pressured. They don't keep track of so-and-so is only given 8% of their income. If you came into some extra money from an inheritance or some other reason and you want to give a whole bunch, go for it, but you could also not. So you put the money in the box. If you used a personal check, they obviously know who did that. But if you put in just cash, they don't keep track of who's done what. But yeah, you would have less money to give, which is not free to run organizations and all that. There are bills and all that. So yeah, less money. And actually, I think Pew Research had a study about educated individuals in certain religions. I thought Hindus were at the top, and the Jehovah's Witnesses were definitely, if not the very bottom, quite near the bottom. And they make less money on average.
It's a one-two punch there.
Yeah, it is. So, and that's quite interesting. But they're more focused on serving their organization and preaching rather than go out and make a career, be super busy. Even if you can give a lot of money, they rather have you serve them.
Yeah,
but they won't turn away good money either. So it's and
they don't use the word church, right? What is a local building called?
A Kingdom Hall. They don't like to be associated with churches.
Yeah.
They don't like to use, because they think all other religions, even Christian denominations, are all false, and they are the one true Christian congregation. So they don't like to use a lot of the same words. So even if they had what would be considered a tithe, I imagine they wouldn't use the word tithe. They'd use their own word. They just don't want to be associated with Christendom, and also non-Christian faith. So they don't like to use the same word. So no church, but a kingdom hall, and then a group of it would be called a congregation.
Now, a kingdom hall, an individual building, who owns that building?
That gets a little interesting. There is some corporations locally. If it's shared by a number of congregations, which is sometimes efficient for the area, there is some, I know sometimes there's incorporating that goes on, but I think ultimately, well, they would say Jesus technically owns everything. Not legally, but
right.
He's the head of the congregation. But I think ultimately any kind of calls are made by the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, which sometimes they call Bethel.
Fair enough. Now, I happen to know, and I'll tread lightly here, but you have relatives, we'll just say that are in the organization, the same organization, the Jehovah's Witness organization. If you were to stop going, or if you were to be something even worse, where you would say the teachings are false, what would happen to your relationships?
Now, it can vary, but in a nutshell, if you willfully write a letter and say, I no longer want to be a Jehovah's Witness, and they like that in writing, fair enough, they want it official, that's called disassociated. If you are found, quote, guilty of a serious enough sin, and they got a whole process on how to determine that, and there's a committee, like a judicial committee that figures it out, but if they say, hey, you did sex outside of marriage, you are not sorry for it, you did it long enough, you knew what you were doing wrong, they will, quote unquote, kick you out. That's called disfellowship. So one is willful, you're doing it yourself, disassociated. Disfellowship means we found you guilty of a serious wrongdoing or some grave sin, and we are excommunicating you. So either way, you're treated the same, as in your family cannot talk to you outside of serious emergencies, and once that emergency is done, they go back to shunning you. So if, great-grandma is in the hospital and dying, and they might say, okay, come say your goodbyes, they'll interact with you in that moment, but once the situation is done, back to shunning. No phone calls, no emails, no text messages, nothing.
And of course, for some people that might not be that hard, but if everyone you know is involved, it could be a problem.
For some people, the shunning is extremely difficult because as you grow up a Jehovah's Witness, you are encouraged to only make friends within the faith. So if you grew up from very young and you made your friends network only with Jehovah's Witnesses, if you leave or you did something that got you disfellowshipped, you lose your entire social network. And that can be really difficult for some people. And for some people, they have the mettle to handle that, but many do not. And it's hard enough to lose your family, but your friends can be just as hard because you can't pick your family, but you can pick your friends. So those are people who are just as dear to you sometimes as your family because you have the same interests and you spend just as much time with them. So that can be really difficult. And I've noticed over the years that JWs, from their publications to their official speeches, they're really doubling down on shunning. Because it is considered a loving thing to do because you're trying to get them to come back. And since they sincerely believe that in order to get to the paradise earth, you have to be a Jehovah's Witness, you have to be on a good standing with Jehovah, shunning them will get them to come back. And they also believe that shunning is a protection for the congregation as well. So if you had people getting up and giving speeches about no sex outside of marriage, but that person is well known for sleeping around and they're a leader, well, that doesn't work. So they believe that they're protecting the congregation, quote unquote, keeping it clean by shunning these people. Now, they can come to a kingdom hall, but they can't talk to anyone except the elders. So they come in right before it starts, and they tend to leave right after because there's no point in coming early. You can't talk to anyone. You can't have fun with someone. So they've been really doubling down, like no text messaging, no email, because that's considered communication.
Wow. And what happens if someone is 13. I mean, is there a process where you, as a quasi-adult at 13, like a confirmation thing, that you become an official member, or is that at birth?
You become an official member when you are baptized, and they believe in full water baptism. You have to be dunked. You can't be sprinkled or anything like that. That's when you become an official member, but no particular age. They do like when young people are baptized, because if you get them young, you can keep them longer, likely. So no particular age. I've heard of people getting baptized around 13 or a little sooner. I don't know what the record is. Probably single-digit age. I don't know what the record is, though. But if that's when you're an official member, is baptism.
If you're baptized at the age of 1 by your parents, would that count, or do they think you should be fully aware of what you're doing?
I see. You can't be baptized at 1. They don't believe in infant baptism.
Okay.
You have to, so you have to be, old enough to be able to answer some questions. So a group of elders would get together after someone has expressed interest in baptism, and they would ask someone, there's some obviously set questions that they ask from some book, like, what do we believe on this, this, and this? And if you pass that and they know that you've been studying the Bible with your parents or with someone else, if you're new to the faith, you have been studying, they know you, they have seen you coming to their meetings, that's what they call their services, meetings. They're going to know that you likely know the answer to these, but they will have a formal interview, for lack of a better word.
I see. So what happens if you're 12, let's just say, and you've not yet been baptized, but everyone else in your family has, and you say, I'm just not feeling it, I'm not going to get baptized. Are you shunned then, or are you just someone who hasn't been converted yet, so it's okay to talk to you?
So with minors, it always gets a tad complicated. If a 12-year-old didn't want to get baptized, I don't think that hopefully the parents wouldn't force it. They do want some kind of consent, even though you're 12. No, they wouldn't shun you for not getting baptized, not in that situation. I would be surprised. Again, some people can act their own way, but officially, no, parents would be worried because, time's short and let's get going. You need to be baptized. So they would probably double down on the child and study with them more and reason and get them. And the elders would probably be involved, and maybe their friends would be encouraging them too. So you only get shunned if you're a member of Jehovah's Witnesses, which means you're baptized. So if someone had been going to a Kingdom Hall for 2 years and they were well known but never baptized, but knew a lot of stuff, and they did something wrong, they couldn't be disfellowshipped or disassociated, because that's only for baptized members. Now they still might get around, like, hey, don't talk to that person, that kind of deal.
Now, a little twist on that scenario. Let's say you get baptized at 12, and everyone thought you knew what you were doing, including you, which is often a mistake for a 12-year-old, if I can remember being 12. And then let's say at the age of 14, now you decide that this is not for you. Does everything come down now around you? Is it still okay because you're 14? What do you think?
I have heard of people under 18, I'll just say that, not a legal minor, at least in the United States, of being disfellowshipped, but they still live at home because they're a minor, and maybe finishing high school and all that. They don't kick them out of the house in that scenario. Now, someone who's 30 years old still living at home for whatever valid reason, if you get disfellowshipped, the family may say, look, you're old enough, you did this, you're disfellowshipped, get out. It could be a personal matter, but it wouldn't surprise me if more often than not they would be interested in, you need to be out of our household if you're going to be a non-Jehovah's Witness. But with a minor, I have heard of them getting disfellowshipped, and you are not to talk to them. Now, it's a little different when they live at home. The parents obviously would say, hey, get up, time to go to school, that kind of thing. But they would not talk to them about spiritual things. So then there's like a spiritual shunning with a minor living at home, or literally anyone living at home who is disfellowshipped. If they have to stay in the home, no matter what age, it's absolutely required for their situation. You could then talk to them, but you definitely keep it to a minimum, and it absolutely cannot be about spiritual matters. So if you have your family worship night on Wednesday at 7 o'clock and you do whatever that's Jehovah's Witness approved, the disfellowship minor or non-minor adult wouldn't be involved in that, is how I understand it. So minors can be shunned. It gets complicated, yes, but they can be.
Fair enough. I've got other questions, but I don't want to be at only the things I thought of. Is there anything specific that you think my listeners should know? Maybe something that they've never heard about before?
Yeah, I think it's interesting how Jehovah's Witnesses have been dealing with COVID-19. I don't know how other faiths have been dealing with it. I've kind of become interested in that. So Jehovah's Witnesses are not meeting in person. They have gone fully remote.
Wow.
With Zoom is very popular with all sorts of people, at least in the West, Zoom, maybe other programs throughout the world, fully remote. Interestingly, since so many, even JWs, so many people have devices with a camera and microphone, that has actually made it fairly smooth. Once some of the kinks got worked out, it's gone fairly smoothly. And it's great for those who aren't interested in Jehovah's Witnesses but are still in, because you can mute or turn it down or be reading something on your screen and look like you're paying attention. That can be quite wonderful. So they have also stopped going from door to door preaching.
Interesting.
And, well, that's quite smart because, one, you don't want to be spreading anything, and the optics of that would be horrendous for their image, and they're very conscious of their image.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I'm fascinated by religions in general, as regular show listeners know. But if people go to a meeting in person less often, if they go to the Kingdom Hall less often, if they can sign up for a Zoom meeting and look like they're paying attention but read something else or play a game or even mute their video and sound and leave the room because no one would know per se if they didn't see you leave, does that have a long-term effect on the numbers? Are people less likely to go? Are more people likely to leave? Have you thought about that?
I have, and I'm merely just waiting for time to pass to see what happens when in-person starts happening again. It's going to vary widely depending where. I would say also one interesting, you mentioned about turning audio off. You could certainly do that.
Yeah.
And of course, your audio should always be turned off because someone is speaking and
right.
They have the ability to mute everyone. It's just like work meetings, mute everyone. But they do want your camera on when possible. It is not a hard rule because someone may be a believer, but they're maybe married to a non-believer and they could be doing something. It is not a requirement to the point where we'll excommunicate you if you don't, that kind of deal. But if you're especially of a person of position, your camera should be on. You should be dressed just like the meeting, meaning shirt and tie, maybe, and a suit jacket if you're giving a speech or something. So they want that camera on. One, to check in on people. They say to make sure people are attending so they don't become spiritually weak. It's also, I'm sure, subtly to make sure people are dressing up because they know exactly why, because people would probably be in their pajamas listening and loving it. Well, no, you need to be listening and paying attention, but you also need to be dressing up formally like they do for their ministry and for their meetings, which is skirts or dresses for women and shirt, tie, jacket, or suit basically for men.
Very nice.
The camera should be on, and I have heard accounts of people getting text messages from a higher up in the congregation, hey, why isn't your camera on? Or are you okay? Or that kind of deal. It just depends on the person. But yeah, again, there's always little ways of controlling someone.
Yeah, because it makes a lot of sense because, whether it's well-intentioned, and I'll assume for most people they mean the best when they shun you, but it's a fascinating system that has been designed for the benefit of the organization as a whole, which I guess I wasn't thinking this question earlier, but what is the hierarchy? What is the organization? There's not a pope.
No.
Who runs it? And I'm assuming the individual communities, congregations, community hall, kingdom halls send money upstream somewhere. Where does that money go?
Yeah, so it is run by men. Women do not have a position of authority in terms of teaching and running things. Now, they can be involved in things, and many women, Jehovah's Witnesses, are used for a lot of things. But they would say Jehovah is the ultimate. Jesus is currently in charge of the congregation and all earthly matters like the organization, teaching, the materials they produce. It's all Jehovah's Spirit, and Jesus is in charge of it. But when we come down to reality, there are, right now, I don't know how many, maybe like 5 to 8 or 9 or something like that. Right now, there are governing body members. They are men.
Right.
They choose themselves, really. There is no application process. They claim Jehovah's Spirit guides them to appoint a person to become a governing body member.
Fair enough.
They are really kind of in charge of everything in terms of spiritual food and direction. And then, of course, they have helpers, and it works away. So all the little bit of work kind of all just trickle down with people who are helpful to them and their tasks. But so there's the governing body. They're kind of in charge of everything. And then there are circuit overseers. They're kind of like a regional manager, if you want to think about business. And they oversee several congregations, and they visit every so often to encourage and make sure things are okay, provide direction. And then locally, in a congregation, there will be elders, and it's a body of elders, so it's a group. Just like the governing body, it's a group.
Yeah.
So at the congregation level, elders, and then they are assisted by ministerial servants, and then there's just a regular old publisher.
Now,
So nothing complicated.
Sure.
They like the idea of a group of people in charge versus an individual.
Now, the people at the governing body at the very top, are they making bank on this, or are they living an impoverished, humble life, and the money is just getting stacked up in big piles somewhere? Who gets the money, or is there no money left over?
They have had some money problems. They had to have some governing body member talk about there's more money going out than coming in. That was a little while ago. As for how they live, I believe, they live at the world headquarters. There's a couple different buildings, but it's all in the state of New York, pretty close to the city of New York. There's Wallkill, Fishkill, different places. They gotten out of the city and sold off their property that they've had for decades, which turned out to be a good investment. Anyone who owned property in New York in the 20s or 30s or 40s is buku rich now. That's kind of how that goes. So they're trying to get out of the big city, and I don't blame them. I believe anyone who works full-time, meaning they had to take a vow of poverty. So anyone who works for Jehovah's Witnesses full-time, meaning they don't have regular employment and they're dedicating themselves to the organization, I believe they have to take a vow of poverty, at least in the United States, and that's because of legal reasons. And they get an allowance, but they're pretty much funded by donations, and everyone has a roommate if you're not married, so that way they consolidate resources. I don't think the governing body gets wealthy salaries that they're hiding. I don't see any evidence for that. But, everything's paid for them. Health insurance, food. If you work for us, we'll provide all the basics for you, plus an allowance that's within government regulations and whatnot.
May not be a way to become filthy rich, but you're not going to be, suffering, I guess. No. Fair enough. What about medical stuff? Because I know people know the whole blood transfusion and other things. What is the current state of affairs, and has it ever changed?
There has been a little change on what's called the blood issue. Blood transfusions are a hard no, even for minors. Obviously, if the state or government steps in and makes a hospital provide a child with some service, the parents can fight that, but obviously you can't do anything if the state makes it happen. They will not disfellowship those parents unless they said, yeah, go ahead with it. But, if you did your part and fought it, and even Watchtower will provide some legal resources if necessary. It has changed a little bit. Now there's some things that are a matter of conscience, and that's been several years since this is new, and I'm not really terribly up to date with it. But so as medicine has progressed, there are parts of the blood. I think there's 4 parts to blood that are hard no, but then there are the smaller parts that can be a matter of conscience.
Oh,
so
like platelets or white blood cells or something?
I think so. It's not the 4 main parts, the whole blood, and then the 4 main components are, I believe, are hard no, and anything lower than that can be a matter of conscience. And interestingly, if I knew so-and-so was okay with some kind of medicine that had a small part, and I didn't like it, I'm supposed to keep my nose to myself. That's their conscience, their business.
Oh, but if
interesting.
If one of your fellow members of Jehovah's Witness goes in for elective surgery and they end up agreeing to blood transfusion as part of that surgery, that would be a problem for them from the organization perspective?
Yes. If you, and it was all willful and you were part of it, you cannot get a whole blood transfusion. Absolutely not. Even if it was your own blood, sometimes I think with surgeries, they'll take some of your blood ahead of time, keep it properly in a cooler of some kind, and they have it as a backup if they need it. Once that blood has left your body, especially in that manner, it will not go back into your body.
Exit only, huh? There's no take back.
Pretty much.
I hadn't even thought
and then
about
it gets complicated with if it went through a machine to be cleaned and there's a consistent cycle. Oh my goodness, I don't even care. Some people can get some would probably say hard no on some machine, but some people would be, I think that's fine because it's, I don't know, it's all part of a consistent flow or something. It gets really weird.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What other things can you think of that you'd like to talk about?
I am interested in talking about what I call adopting a JW. Of course, the pandemic has changed things, but just assume as a Jehovah's Witness comes to your door, right now they're doing a lot of letter writing and making phone calls that they can find on public records.
Oh, my.
So if you get a phone call from a Jehovah's Witness, a letter from them, or if they were at your door or place of business, I like to, if I have a Mormon or someone who's talking to me, I like to quote unquote adopt them. And for me, that means I want to talk to you more than just this one time. Come on back, or where would you like to meet? Let's talk a little bit more. And I'll let them talk about their beliefs, but then I want to insert some things to help them question their beliefs and to understand how I think and why I think secular humanism is a great way to go, and all that kind of thing. So if a Jehovah's Witness comes to you, you can certainly dismiss them and say, don't ever come here again. Sure, that's your right. And they should respect that, especially if you ask them, I don't ever want people to come here again. Please put me on the do not call list. They're supposed to pass that information on to their local elders. But, you can maybe do a little research on the Australian Royal Commission, ARC, A-R-C, Australian Royal Commission. That was when Australia looked into a lot of abuse issues, I think not just with Jehovah's Witnesses, but there was quite a bit of interviewing with Jehovah's Witnesses. And in fact, a governing body member was, I believe, deposed. There's actual video of them interviewing a governing body member about their policies and what's called the two-witness rule to any kind of wrongdoing, and how all those things have caused problems and allowed child rapists to thrive in their organization. So maybe show them that video. They're going to show you their videos. They're going to show you their literature, and let them do that, and then say, well, let me show you something, and maybe have something set and ready, and just keep it simple, or invite them back, or just adopt them and try to see where you can go. Get them to think.
This video
to explore resources outside of their bubble, because they are most definitely in a bubble. They only read their publications, pretty much.
The video you mentioned, is there any chance you can send me a link and I'll put it in the show notes?
Absolutely. I'll find some good resources on that. If you want to learn more about JWs, obviously talking to someone like me would be helpful. If you know someone like that, XJW subreddit is a good place. You'll meet a lot of former, obviously, XJWs and even current ones who are in the closet, so to speak, there. And if you have a question, ask it there, and it will get answered. And you'll get really good resources there as well.
Another thought, holidays and birthdays and stuff, that's out. That's not allowed. Is that correct?
Correct. And they really don't care for those because, one, they only want to celebrate things that are what they would deem as biblical. So Christmas, they call it, it's really a pagan holiday. And when you look back, I mean, there's a lot of Jesus was not born on the 25th, and it was they got some things right. Broken clocks are right twice a day, right? Birthdays, it puts focus on the individual, not on Jehovah. Plus, again, pagans have influenced, and for them, pagans, anything that wasn't Christian. I mean, I think they have a very broad definition. Basically, any other kind of religion and their beliefs and practices and rituals they don't want to be a part of. So birthdays, Christmas, Easter, they talk about the pagan origins there. The one thing they do celebrate would be wedding anniversaries, because Jehovah created the institution of marriage between one man and one woman. So that's okay. If someone graduated high school, that's okay to have a high school party. They always caution, make sure the parties are, Christian, or nothing's wild is happening, because you wouldn't want to bring reproach upon Jehovah. Be careful about the music and who you invite. So some of that's just part of their personality. But yeah, holidays, nope, don't celebrate them. Interestingly, you can take advantage of all the deals that come around because of holidays.
For Black Friday or something?
Yeah, they're not quite that extreme, I guess. It's okay to take advantage of those deals. It's okay to take that time off during then, but they won't be involved in anything holidays personally or at work, anything like that.
The other thing that popped in my head, talk to me about the 144,000. I mean, what is that about, and how does that work?
So Jehovah's Witnesses do not believe all good people who die will go to heaven, which is common in Christendom, nor will bad people go to a burning, torturous hell. They actually do not like that teaching. They don't believe bad people will go in to be tortured. Bad people, in the end, will just be destroyed. So no torture or anything like that. But they do look to the book of Revelation, and they have some very interesting beliefs about Revelation. They have a whole book on that. And it's just so confusing. A lot of things tie into them in modern times, which is quite a stretch even for Revelation. But they believe 144,000 people will be selected to go to heaven and rule over a paradise earth. And I think people have been selected for that since, biblical time, early first century Christianity, and throughout time. And it really picked up, of course, when they existed. Surprise, surprise. And all governing body members have to be what's called anointed, which means you have been given the okay spiritually. It's something internal, like, I really think I'm of the 144,000, and you just proclaim it, I guess. So governing body members have to be anointed and go to heaven for some reason. But helpers and anyone below that do not.
Well, I mean, that's one hell of a job perk, man. If you get to a certain level, you've got a lock on paradise. I don't know if they would use the word paradise, but you've got a lock on something better. That sounds like a nice perk.
Yeah. There's not a whole lot that they teach on what someone will do up there. They just, there's no details, and they try to avoid a lot of speculation. Maybe they've learned from over their century of existence. Be careful about details.
Yeah. Well,
they used to publish numbers of how many would partake. So when their version of Easter is the memorial of Christ's death, which they go by the Jewish calendar. So it can fall on a different day of the week. But usually in March, April-ish, they calculate using the Jewish calendar, and they pass those emblems, the bread and the wine, and it's more of a remembrance. So a normal JW or a visitor should take the item and just pass it along. But an anointed person would partake, take a piece of the bread, eat it, drink a little bit of the wine. And they don't believe in transubstantiation. It's just all symbolic. But an anointed person would consume those items, and that signifies that they are of the anointed.
Huh. Very, very interesting. I was also thinking, and I may have this wrong, but I do know, and we could talk about this in general, in the past, the organization, the Watchtower, or maybe some other name for a body, you can correct me here, has declared certain dates as the end of the world. And for some reason, I think 1975 was the last one. Was it Come Alive or Stay Alive in 75? What do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I'm not very well versed in all that, but 1975 was a time when a lot of JWs thought that was the end, and they had some reason and calculation craziness that gave it that. I did talk to a JW who was getting baptized around that time, and I think I asked about it. Like, what was your experience? I wanted a firsthand account from someone, and they did teach that. Maybe, I don't know how official it was from headquarters, or if they kind of played it cautious or kept it under the table, but one person who was getting baptized around that time was told by a higher up, I think a circuit overseer, so it's someone who's official representative of Bethel, of the organization. He was told, you made it just under the wire. So it existed for sure. They thought, and they really pulled back from a lot of that. Just, they keep harping on the any day now, it's here, it's closer, we're in the final minutes or hours. They like to stress that versus the last days, because saying minutes or hours sounds more
pressing,
urgent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, oh my God, if there's minutes or hours. When did this organization form? Because it's not 2,000 years old, obviously, but
No.
How did it come together?
Yeah, there's a lot of good information. I think late 1800s. There are some people, and I can't remember the name, it's escaping me at this moment. C.T. Russell, I think, was one of the early founders. They used to be called Bible students, and they were the type that wanted to, they thought religion had just, kind of like Joseph Smith and with Mormons, religion has just gotten out of hand. It's crazy. It's, all of a sudden things have changed. People aren't looking to the Bible like they should, and that kind of thing. And there was some individuals. So late 1800s really started picking up in the early 1900s. So they go back pretty far. And I can't remember when they switched from Bible students to Jehovah's Witnesses, but it was a long time ago.
Sure, fair enough. Do you have any idea for a local group's budget, what percentage of that might go to charity, feeding the poor, that kind of thing?
I don't believe any of it really goes to any sort of charities. They don't like to be involved with other churches or organizations because they're wrong. They're influenced by Satan, the devil. They do take care of themselves, obviously, and that's very good. So if there's a disaster, they have committees and processes in place to provide, to either house them if someone's home was destroyed, clean it up, provide food and resources. So they've gotten really big on that. I think they learned some hard lessons with some disasters and saw, we need to, of course they believe more disasters as part of the end times. So, but I think they learned some lessons of people were really scared. They couldn't find people or where they went. They didn't have backup contacts. And I bet that would scare you if you do genuinely care about your people. You want to take care of them. So they have that. But as for them working with Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, I have never seen any evidence of them supporting them. They don't work against them. If they're a non-religious group, I don't think it's bad to volunteer or wrong to help those groups. I know some Jehovah's Witnesses who have worked for food banks as their employment, and that's okay. But they would not get involved with, Catholics feeding the hungry Inc. or something like that.
Yeah.
Nope, they wouldn't get involved with them.
Fair enough. You did mention a few minutes ago the two witness rule. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it comes from a Bible scripture. I'm not very good at remembering the exact numbers and verse. I'm better at remembering the what it says, the gist of something.
Yeah.
Basically, in the New New Testament, which they like to call Greek scriptures versus New Testament. I think they're trying to, again, separate themselves from typical wording in Christendom. But in the Greek scriptures, there's something about needing two witnesses to an offense. So when it comes to and we're not talking like a legal offense so much as when it's a judicial in their world, a grave sin or a serious sin. If I accuse you of something and there's no other witness to it, it's a he said matter. Unless there's a confession or more evidence that something happened, their hands are kind of tied in a sense. So, and that, while is good in many instances, it keeps from people from just accusing and then we're going to disfellowship you because someone said you did this and you're denying it, but we're going to believe it. Obviously, that's our judicial system runs on. The more evidence, the more firsthand accounts and all that, the better. But it really is a problem with certain offenses that are kept very secretive, such as abuse.
Yeah.
And that becomes a big, big problem. And yeah, they've been experiencing a lot of problems with abuse. A lot of lawsuits are bringing their policies into light, but they keep doubling down on this. If they feel that they have a biblical reason to do something, they are just going to double down on it. And because God is, they follow laws as much as they can, as long as it doesn't conflict with God's law. They believe in being a good citizen, pay your taxes, pay your debts, that kind of deal.
Fair enough.
But
and I don't want to
don't violate God's law.
Sure. I don't want to take all of your time, and I appreciate you very much being here. Any other topic or topics that you think we should cover that listeners should know about?
Interestingly, they also have their own translation of the Bible called the New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures, or New World Translation. I think that really... So when they were Bible students and maybe very early Jehovah's Witnesses, I don't know the timing, but they, whatever translation they used at the time, they would have some problems with the way things were worded. John 1:1, and the word was a God. They don't believe in the Trinity. They believe there's Jehovah, and then Jesus was the first creation, and then the Holy Spirit is Jehovah's power, or electricity, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
So no Trinity. So they would have little problems with their beliefs that they believe were biblical versus the translation they were using. So they set out to, one, put Jehovah's name back in the Bible instead of capital Lord, Lord, or Yahweh. They want to put Jehovah's name back in the text wherever Yahweh in the Hebrew or Greek scriptures was used. So they put it in there thousands of times back the way it should be.
Yeah.
And so they set out to do their own translation, and we don't know who was doing it. I would assume a governing body at that time, however many there might have been, and some other helpers, but they don't put their name to the translation. They don't put their name, anyone who, obviously someone has to write their publications or a group of people. None of their names are ever used because it's all about Jehovah, and they're not interested in taking credit for things, which I can appreciate, not wanting to be, famous for something, but it creates problems too when it comes to checking information and resources and who's qualified to translate Greek or Hebrew and that kind of thing. So with the New World Translation, it fits their beliefs best and what they feel is correct. They did update the New World Translation in 2013, cleaned up a few things, I guess. I don't think anything substantial, but new cover, some extra appendices and resources, and that got Jehovah's Witnesses all excited in 2013. And they have been using technology really well for a while. When I was growing up, there was VeggieTales or other programs that I could see kids of other Christian denominations using and enjoying, but Jehovah's Witnesses didn't really have anything. They had a couple of VHSs here and there, and they had maybe one or two books for little kids, and they thought that was just fine. And they don't have a Sunday school. Kids sit with the adults during their services.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're treating them like adults, I guess. they're supposed to sit there and understand these things and help them pay attention within the confines of a child's mind, so they can doodle and all that, but they sit with the adults. So, and now they have seen that they have some of the worst retention rates for people raised in the faith and staying in the faith. I think that's another Pew Research has said that people raised in the faith tend to leave.
Yeah.
So they're not doing well on that. They may do well in other things, but not retaining young people who are raised, they don't stay in the faith. So they've been upping their materials for kids, making think crosswords or things that kids can play and draw and color, and they have a little cartoon series for them now, and they've been really using the technology to, I think, try to keep up, and maybe they kind of saw that they were behind everyone else.
Yeah. Well, I hate to end on that scary thought, but I'm gonna, unless you have something that you really, really want to throw in. But I thank you, Mike, for your time. Greatly appreciate it. And, if anything new comes up, please feel free to let us know. And I thank you for being on the Phil Ferguson Show.
Thank you.
It's getting to that point in the show where we're going to wrap some things up, but I was thinking about kind of a funny little data thing. The hosting company, the Spreaker, where my podcast is originally stored and every podcast player pulls from there, they report data on how the show is doing and how many listens the show gets. And they used to report something like 20 to 30,000 listens per episode. And they made some adjustments, and the numbers went down, and then they made some more adjustments, and the numbers went down, and they were trying to get to the point where the numbers were more pure. Because, when someone listens to a show, what does it mean that they listen to the show? Does that mean they hit start and it went a few seconds, and does that count as a listen? Did it go a minute or two? Is 2 minutes in count as a listen? And was when someone stops the show, pauses, and then comes back to the show, does that create a second listening event, but it's still the same person? I don't know. But they kept changing the rules, and every time they changed the rules, the numbers that got reported were smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think part of that might have been to make the advertising companies really comfortable that they were absolutely getting the views and the listens that they were paying for. And that makes sense from a business model. The other thing that can be a big problem with podcasts is that there's no one unified system of listening to a podcast. Sure, my podcast is put up on Spreaker, but then other companies will pull from there, or they will pull a copy of the episode and save it on their servers so they don't have to keep pinging Spreaker to be able to reliably download it to you and your device, your computer, your phone. And so they keep a copy, at least for a while it's in high demand, perhaps. And they don't have to report the numbers to Spreaker. So Spreaker tries to get those numbers, I'm sure, because advertising dollars. So it gets complicated. It's not like YouTube, where there's just one YouTube. There's other video platforms, but there's only one YouTube. So there's not just, there is only one Spreaker, but not everyone uses Spreaker. All kinds of people. Matter of fact, the 80-pound gorilla is the, I guess it's 800-pound gorilla. How much does a gorilla weigh? I don't know. The gorilla is Apple, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and all that stuff. Well, in the last couple of weeks, some things have changed at Spreaker. I don't know what changed, but suddenly my show, which was years ago saying 20 to 30,000 listens, over a period of a year or two has whittled all the way down to about 5,000 listens, according to Spreaker. Now, I don't think that 1/4 or 1/5 of my listeners stayed and everybody else went away, because I do hear from people on a regular basis that they're new to the show. So I know there's people coming in, and I'm sure there's people that get bored of the show and go and do something else. I've done that. That's normal human behavior. But in the last few weeks, the numbers have started going up dramatically. As an example, in the last week, they now show that I have over 20, maybe 24,000
listens in the last week. I don't think the listener base for my show went up 5-fold in a few weeks. If it did, well, that's cool. But I think it's just some kind of change in the counting, and or they're getting different data from Apple. That often seems to be a problem because Apple does not like to apparently report to Spreaker or make available to Spreaker the number of listens, because they want that data for themselves to keep it private, because data information is valuable. But yay, the Phil Ferguson Show now gets 25,000 listens, downloads in a week. And it really probably shouldn't matter to me, but it does make me feel a little bit better that even more people were listening than I thought. Or are they? Anyway, enough rambling about that. I do hope to get one more show, maybe 2 before Christmas, and then I might be away from everybody and away from making the podcast for a week or 2 to enjoy the holidays. Alone, probably. I mean, my wife is here, and I'm so delighted for that, because I know there are people that are kind of in isolation all by themselves, and I could see how that would suck very, very much. Anyway, wrapping up, and thank you for listening. If you can share the show, that'd be great. If you can leave a 5-star review on either iTunes or Apple Podcast or Stitcher, I would like that very much. I thank you in advance for that. If you'd like to support the show and send a little financial symbol of your appreciation, you can do that at patreon.com/Phil, and $1 per show would be great. The top tier is $6.66 per show. And again, it's not per week, it's per show. So if I don't put out a show for a week or 2, you're not out a freaking thing. So that's a way you can show your support. I appreciate all of that. If you have show ideas, let me know. I have several things already pre-recorded, like the one earlier today, and I really, really hope that it wasn't in a previous show. I couldn't find where I had included it. I had recorded that a couple of months ago, so it's a little dated, but it's done. It's a bonus thing because I already had the Investing Skeptically and the interview. So I figured, you know what, I'll slip it in there. It kind of fits with today's show. But if you have ideas, if you have questions, email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com, and I'll try to get back to you. If you don't hear from me within a couple of days, a week, you may, of course, send me a second email. I will not be bothered by it at all, because sometimes things come in and I get distracted and I start working on something else, and then suddenly I realize that I have an old email that I haven't answered. Once again, thank you for listening to The Phil Ferguson Show. And hopefully, with the vaccine coming online next year, 2021, we can start having conferences and we can see each other in person, share a drink, and gasp, dare I say it, maybe shake hands, high five, and maybe even hugs. Who knows? Until then, ciao.